I was hesitant to watch 9/11 because it's not a topic I really want to watch films about. But Charlie Sheen is in it, and I wanted to watch it for Charlie Sheen, so I decided to give it a go. And I kind of have conflicting thoughts. There are things about it that I want to praise, but I also think that they might be things that are not done very well. So I will sum up my thoughts very briefly, but then I'm going to have to go into a bit of spoiler detail. I don't usually give spoilers in my discussions, or if I do, it's at the very end. But with this one, I feel like I'm risking spoiling things a bit too much early on, so I'll go into detail in a moment. The film was released in 2017. It's directed by Martin Guigui. I apologize if I mispronounced that. It's written by Guigui and Stephen Golebiowski, and it's based on Elevator by Patrick Carson. Then we have a cast including, of course, Charlie Sheen. We also have Gina Gershon, Louise Guzmán, Wood Harris, Whoopi Goldberg, and various others. And the story focuses on 5 people who are trapped in an elevator at the World Trade Center after the plane has hit. And I knew this was going to be a challenging watch. But at the same time, they took an approach that, on the one hand, I'm complimenting, but at the same time, I'm criticizing. I don't know how I feel about it. I'll talk about that in a moment. I will sum up very, very briefly, first of all. It's quite slow, but it gets to the point where it's just so challenging to watch, so emotional. And the slowness is maybe kind of something I want to praise as well, so I'll expand on that in a moment. The performances are great, the characters are well written, it gets really intense, and in general, it's watchable. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to watch it, and I'm saying this as somebody who has no direct connection to anybody affected by 9/11. If you have that connection, I'd say it's borderline watchable, but it does get challenging. So, I don't know. I feel like there's just something about this. I don't know why, and I don't know if other people feel the same way. But I feel like making films about the event just feels too soon. And I know it's been almost a quarter of a century, but it still feels too soon. And on the one hand, I don't think the film should exist, but at the same time, it's telling important stories or stories inspired by true events. And that helps to keep the memory of people alive and to help people, not that anybody's going to forget anytime soon, but these stories are important to tell so that generations down the line can maybe feel even a little bit of what it might have been like at the time. So I'm realizing every single thought I have on this is conflicting. I feel like it's too soon, but I think it's really important. So I don't know. I really don't know how I feel about this. I'd love to know what you think of it. Definitely check it out if you're curious, but proceed with caution. I will now go into some spoiler details, so there will be spoilers from now, including the ending. I will be discussing the ending of the film. So I want to talk about this slowness and why I think on the one hand it makes it more watchable. For about 2/3 of the film, maybe even a little longer, it did feel like I was watching a film about 9/11. It just felt like it was a film about people trapped in an elevator. The power's gone out, they're stuck there, they're panicking as anybody would. It didn't really feel like it was about this specific tragedy. And one of the main reasons for that is that it's very quiet. Now, I don't know if this is what it would be like. If it's completely accurate, then fair enough. But I feel like it would be very, very noisy. And I could hear nothing. Nothing, no chaos, no noise coming from outside after the plane had hit, outside of the elevator. It was just so quiet that it just felt like people were trapped in an elevator because of maybe a power cut or something. And that made it feel almost more watchable. Because the last third, certainly the last kind of 20 minutes, are very, very challenging to watch. And if the whole film had been like that, I honestly don't think I would have made it through to the end. So on the one hand, the slowness and the fact that it doesn't feel like a film set at the World Trade Center at that point kind of makes it more watchable. So I realise I'm contradicting myself there. It doesn't feel realistic, but it does make it easier to watch. So it's kind of a benefit and a criticism. And then also, I did feel their panic as well. As I said, it didn't necessarily feel like what I expected it to feel like, but the characters still felt very panicked. Again, as one would if you're stuck in an elevator. And then we get to the final 20-ish minutes. Once the bit that, the bit that really started to affect me is when the smoke started to come in through the elevator. And that's when it started to feel more like what I would have expected. And again, I'm not an expert on this. I have no idea if it would have been very quiet at the time, but I just, for me, it's not what I was expecting. But when the smoke started to come in through the elevator, that's it. I started to struggle to watch it. It was very, very difficult. And then finally the firefighters arrive and they manage to prise open the doors, and most people get out. And I kind of lost it at this point. This is the bit where I realised I'm really glad that it was really slow, because if it had all been like this, no, I couldn't have watched it. And I imagine that would be the case for many people. They're all out of the elevator apart from one person. And I won't say which person. I know I said spoilers, but just in case, I won't say which character. And the elevator drops. And there's no way they can get up and out through those doors, through that tiny gap. So this firefighter climbs on top of the elevator. Obviously, it's much lower down now, and opens up the top of it. And he reaches down and grabs onto the hand of the character, and he tries to pull the character up. There's no way he can do this. There's no way he can lift this person up by his one arm, holding onto the character's one arm. And then we hear some noise. We hear some noise in the background. And then we look at the firefighter very briefly. And it goes black. And it's very clear what's implied there. And I hate it. And it made me so angry and so annoyed. And as I said, if the whole film had been like that, I don't think I would have been able to watch it. And as I said, if you can relate more closely with the story, if you know anybody affected by it, if indeed you were affected by it yourself directly, I know many people did survive, but obviously many did not, then it's going to be a very, very difficult experience. And I don't think I don't know. As I said, I didn't really want to watch any films about 9/11, but I like Charlie Sheen, so I decided to give it a go. And I'm kind of thankful for the most part. It just felt like people trapped in a random elevator in I don't know, a hotel or an office block or a department store or whatever. And then, yeah, once the smoke started going in, that's when it became a little bit too much. And after that, it was just so challenging. So I'm kind of thankful that it was quite slow for most of the film. And it allowed us to build up that connection with the characters, focusing on the characters and what they're going through rather than focusing on what's happening outside. It's not a film about what's happening outside specifically. It's not about who's done this, why are they doing this, what's the chaos outside. We're just focusing on this small number of characters, a tiny percentage of the number of people who lost their lives and people who were affected. And it's just allowing us to realize what it might have been like to be there at that moment, not knowing what's going on outside. I like that. I think that worked really well, that we, the viewer, we knew more than the characters. We weren't being told everything that was happening on the outside. And I feel like that's what would have been like on the inside, not having all of the information. Obviously, if you're in the building, you can't see what's going on the outside. You're not getting all of that information. And that would be terrifying. And as I said, it is very clear to feel the characters' anxieties. And maybe that makes it more realistic in that regard. It's an experience that I never want to have to watch again. I don't want to watch the film ever again. But I think they certainly told it in a way that was very effective. It was told in a way that made it watchable for the most part. The performances are very strong. It's a very challenging film. I'm still on the fence with whether or not it's too soon, because I feel like it is too soon, but at the same time, I'd rather filmmakers were making the films now rather than, say, 50, 60 years down the line, when people making the films would have no memory of it. Maybe they weren't even alive at the time. It's better that people making the films now at least have some memory of it, even if they weren't directly affected. I think most of us can remember at least seeing it on the television if we weren't anywhere near it. And I think that makes it a little bit more acceptable to make the films now, because people involved are going to have a much stronger emotional connection to it. Whereas somebody making a film about it 50, 60 years down the line, it's not really going to have that same impact. So everything I'm saying is contradictory, and I'm well aware of that fact. Either way, proceed with caution. But if you want to watch it, give it a go. It's definitely one of the most challenging films. Certainly the last 20 minutes or so. Leading up to that, as I said, not so much, but in a way that I think was a very good decision. Ultimately, 9/11 is a strong film, a challenging film, a film I never want to watch again. But if you're curious, then I'd say it's worth checking out.